Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you a few cake decorating tips.
Okay, I'm not so sure how well you can see all this, but today before I start baking, I want to introduce you to a couple of tools that make cake baking a whole lot easier. To start with, I want to introduce you to Wilton baking strips. So many people talk about how that they cannot make their cakes level. They always hump up in the middle, therefore they'll crack and split when you actually bring them out of the oven and get ready to decorate them. And I'll show you how those work. You can have the silver ones, which are kind of a metallic, and you also can get these fancy purple pretty ones. But anyhow, the purpose of them is to draw the moisture of the cake out to the edges so that the cake does not rise so high in the middle and split. So I already have one here already started for you, and basically what you do is you put it in water and you soak it before you put it around the pan. But the last thing you want is your cake to stick to the pan and you not be able to get it out. So you start with a good pan release, and I have the Wilton cake release. That's the one that I use, and you just squirt a little bit of that in the bottom of your pan to start with, and then you take your pastry brush and you just paint it on the bottom of the pan. People tease me all the time about, they know why I like painting, because painting reminds me of cake decorating. Who knows, maybe they're right. But you paint it around the bottoms of your pan. Sometimes you might have to go back and get a little bit more. And plus you have to shake this stuff up because it'll get real thick in the bottom and real oily in the top if you don't. So now I have my pan all painted and it's ready for my cake mix. Makes it a little easier to get your wet strips on there if you turn your pan upside down. Now you're ready to put your baking strips on the outside. I'm gonna let those soak just for a minute while I get my cake mixes together, and then I'll be right back with the video. One of the major things in cake baking is you want to keep your area as clean as possible. It's good hygiene, and it will help make the work go a lot easier if you don't have a lot of clutter. Okay, if you remember, first we coated our pan with our pan release. Now I'm going to use my baking strips. I've already got them ready to go around my pan. You take them out of the water and you kind of squeeze off any excess water because you don't want it drippy everywhere. And if you'll notice, it has a little pin in it, and the little pin holds it together in whatever position you want it. So I've already got it pinned in a shape to fit my pan. And you just slip it over the bottom of your pan like that. I generally set my oven for about 33 minutes, and then I'll go back and check my cake to make sure it's ready to bring out of the oven. And the temperature should be 350 if you have a gas oven, but I have worked with electric ovens before and had to turn it down to 325. Because you don't want to cook your cake too fast, but you don't want to cook it too slow. You want it to have a nice even temperature. And I'm so sorry, I try really hard not to be monotone, but sometimes I just get busy thinking about my work, and I end up realizing that my voice is so monotone in videos, and that's the last thing I want. I want it to be interesting, and if I'm so monotone, you're probably not going to be too interested in listening to my voice for very long at all. So we'll get that in the pan and get that pan into the oven and start working on the next one. Okay, just a little tip when you're using the purple strips for your baking strips around your pan. They don't have them large enough to go around my pan, so I have to usually connect a few of them together, a couple of them together. So basically they have this little loop on the end, and you just want to go right inside there like that. Pull that through, and there'll be another strip right here. I'm going to go through that one, and then you can adjust your strips anywhere you need them to go to work around your pan. You will have to connect both ends, so I have one end connected. Now I'm connecting my other end. Just go through both loops like that. And you can slide these down to whatever position you need them so that they fit your pan perfectly. Just slide them right down. And then, you know, I know I'm looking at something a little larger than what I have here, I'm sure. So I'm kind of just still adjusting a little bit. You kind of eyeball it. You'll have to make adjustments when you actually get ready to put it on the pan, but you can kind of eyeball it. Before I ever put it in the water, I go ahead and make sure my size is good, because if you wait until you're putting it in the water, then it's a little more difficult. So I've got my shape I want. It seems like the silver ones may cling to the pan a little better, but they still serve the same purpose. So then after I get it there, just like before, put it down in the water. Just let it sit and saturate in that water until it's ready to go in your pan. Getting it all ready for my mix. Make sure you paint the edges too, because it'll stick along the edges, and that's the last thing you want. Be generous, because you definitely don't want it to stick, you know. Okay. So once again, flip it over. Get that excess water out of your baking strip. And put it on your pan so you can get your next cake in the oven cooking. If you have seams, you want them to be usually opposite of one another. You don't want it like a lot on one end and not on the other end. You kind of want it to be opposite. It is kind of stretched out a little bit now as it's been wet, so I'm going to have to tighten it up some more. That's why I like the ones with the pins better. So you just get that on there as best you can and get it ready to go in the oven. You know what's really funny is I tend to talk to myself occasionally when I'm working. Always have, as long as I can remember. And so making a video while I'm working is really not that different, except I'm talking to the camera. Okay, I've got another little tip for you. When you are carrying a really large cake, like 100 servings, it's best to buy the boards instead of the really thick boards. Because if you buy the little thin ones, you have to double them or triple them, which will cost you about the same amount of money. But these boards they end up being pretty expensive. But anyhow, and then I buy the roll of paper and I put it over the board. Unfortunately, I could not find the white this time, so I had to buy the silver. But I don't want to cover my cake in the silver, so I can flip it over because it's moisture resistant. So I'm just going to flip that over, and I'm going to show you what I do with it next. I like to reuse my boards because they are so expensive. I don't want to have to buy one every single time I make a cake. So I usually, if it's family and friends that don't mind, most of them will come back and ask me if I would like to have my boards back anyhow. So I just go ahead and reuse these thick ones if I have them, and we peel the outside paper off that I've put on, and then they are as good as new again. Like I said, always keep your surface nice and clean as well when you're doing cakes. The last thing you want is to have your stuff on a dirty surface. So I'm just going to pull the edges up around here like this and just tape them. It's easiest if you just start in a few spots so that you can get it where you want it first, and then you can go back and take them off. So I just get my little edges taped there. Kind of fix your corners just right so that they do correct. It's like wrapping a present. If you can wrap a present, you can wrap the cake board. Pretty simple. The original board that was on there was glued, but the original paper that's on there, but because I reuse it, then I just do this each time. And I hope you can learn something from my video, because you know I may not always be making cakes, and I would love it if some of my friends and family would maybe take a look at some of my videos and learn some tricks. And I would love to teach you sometime if you're interested in learning more. I'm probably not the greatest teacher. You might benefit more from a cake design class. I don't know, but I just have fun with it. So I'm always available if you need me. I remember when I first started cake decorating, I did all my supplies. All my supplies I purchased was at the Lavelle's bakery that was here in our town. She since has retired, and the bakery has sold a couple times, so you know, things are quite different. We miss her a lot. I would go there sometimes. I would get in a spot to where I just didn't know how to do something, and I would go in there and she would take the time, her or her assistant would take the time to mentor me and to give me instructions and to teach me how to do the things I didn't know how to do. I could have never made my first wedding cake if it had not been for them, since I had never even taken a wedding cake class. Since then, I took classes, and they were my teachers, and I enjoyed learning from them. But they were just very helpful, always helpful. And I want to be the same way. I don't want to take what I call my God-given talent, because I feel like it is a God-given talent. I don't want to take it for granted, and I don't want to hoard it and not share it with someone else. Anyone who wants to learn, I'm always willing to help you. So when you flip it over, there's my nice, new, clean, ready-to-use board. I would let you watch me put the cake on the board, but honestly, I think I would probably make a mistake. So that's probably one thing that's not a good idea that you watch. But pretend this is a real cake. And basically, if you go to dumping them like this, sometimes they will fall or whatever. So if possible, if the board is the same size as the cake, a lot of times I'll just take my cake and put it down on the table and take my board like this and just flip it. And then the cake ends up where it needs to be. But that only works if it's the right size board. In this cake, it's a lot bigger cake, so I'm gonna have to flip it the old-fashioned hard way, which I'm not looking forward to. And you can't watch me do that because I don't wanna mess up. Okay, I've dumped the cake on the board, and if it doesn't pop out instantly, you can just kind of tap it a little bit, and that'll help it come on out of there. And just gently lift it out. Had a little bit stick there. Usually that means that little spot wasn't quite ready to come out of the oven. As you can see, it's a very large cake, so it's very difficult to dump onto this platter, but I did the best I can, and I'm gonna start icing it. Just a little tip, when you are putting a cake directly on top of another cake, you don't want your board to be bigger. I mean, you just want it to be big enough for the icing only, because you don't want to see that hangover board. So I'm gonna mark this board and cut it so that it's just barely big enough for this cake. And then I'm gonna cut it and wrap it just like I did the other one. I'm actually gonna wrap this cardboard all the way around because it's gonna be sitting right on top of that other cake and I don't want it to stick. When you get it in exactly the spot you want it, I just kind of take a pot holder because it's still warm underneath, and I take it and I flip it. And now when I take my cake pan off, I have to tap it down to get it to totally come out of there. When I take my cake pan off, it's on the board ready to go. And that cake is going to need to cool a few minutes before I can continue on, so I'm going to work on my design a little bit and get some of my colors ready. And once again, you can see the cake is nice and level thanks to my baking strips that I use. Right about now, while the cake is cooling, is a good time to do a little bit of cleanup and get ready for the next part, the decorating. The thing I forgot that I haven't done yet is put my little post in there. I forgot to put my post in, so definitely want you to see how that's done. But you just basically pick your best spots to put them for the most support. And all my little straws cut here. And since my paper is going to be here, I'm going to put my posts in all the right spots. I want them to all be in the middle squares. So I'm going to have like one here, and one here. Since it's a pretty good sized cake, I'm going to go ahead and put a couple more kind of centered because I don't want it to sink in the middle of that cake. We just put those in there, and then I will put my paper back down and wait to put my cake on top. I'm actually going to icing it away from the other cake because that will be easiest to icing it and then put it on there afterwards. Okay, I'm getting ready to put the picture on the cake. And I did a little example because I wanted to show you some ideals. The best way to do it so that you don't have to freehand and then re-ice and mess up over and over and over again. One of the ways that makes it easier is to maybe first draw your picture on paper. So this would be my picture. This is just to give me an outline of it. It sometimes makes it easier. And one of the things I do sometimes is I'll take that and I will draw it with a toothpick. Which kind of just keeps you from being nervous about messing up your cake after you've worked so hard on it. I'm so bad about going back and redoing and redoing and redoing that it just makes it simpler sometimes. I'm just kind of dotting that outline a little bit. In the long run, it just makes it a little less difficult to get your picture on there right the first time. Sometimes I'll take my toothpick and make a line. You can dot it. You can do it just about however you want. I was dotting it to keep there from being a lot of extra debris. I've got a basic design here. And then the rest is a lot easier to fill in after you do that basic design.
Now that I have my colored icings made, I'm going to start filling in the different colors in my picture. I usually start on my border with my outline color, and then I just kind of work my way in and get all the colors in their place. And I'm not going to do a lot of talking the rest of the video because there's not a whole lot to tell you. Can you see how the picture is starting to take form, and you can kind of tell now that it's a cat? So I just keep filling it in. If you make a little mistake like I just did, you can just take a toothpick and pick that out and then go back to your designing. At this point, I'm starting to fill in some of my other colors so that it will even start to look more like the picture that it's supposed to. It just takes lots of time. After I get the design done, then I'll take a paper towel, smash that down a little bit to make it neater looking. And then I'll go back to my designing. Sometimes you might get a little speck of colored icing that falls off and gets on other spots of the cake. Just simply take a toothpick and pick those off and you're ready to go again. Right now I'm just kind of looking over my picture and making any little corrections that I need to. And my picture is just about done, and when that is done, then I'll start on the next thing. I'm now going all around the outside edges of the picture and just putting an extra border on it so that it looks sharper looking. As you can see, I'm just about done with the cake now. I have already put my writing on the cake. I didn't do that on the camera because that's one of those places where it's easy to make a mistake, and it made me nervous doing it on the camera. Right now I am adding some darker color around the eyes because I want them to stand out, to be more noticeable. That too will make the cake have a sharper look to it. Then after that, I'll go back and put the darker color also around the whole entire picture. After the picture's all done, then it's time to put on the border, and then the cake will be finished. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. I hope you learned some tricks to help you better in your future cake endeavors. And thanks for watching. So here is my finished cake. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and turn on those notifications. See you in the next video.